Hello, everybody. Uh, Welcome to our workshop on submitting a proposal to have an exhibition in one of our community galleries. Great to see everybody. I know we had a whole bunch of people. I think as of yesterday, we had 42 people registered for this workshop. So that's quite a bit more than we had expected, but that, I guess, shows the interest that the community has in these exhibitions. So anyway, hello again. Thank you for joining. My name is Andrew Gewirtz, and I'm a member of the Art Center's Members Committee. And I'll be joined today by three of my fellow members, Molly, Sharon, and Andy. And we'll spend about the next hour or so talking to you about the proposal process. So the topics that we're going to include. First, I'm going to talk about the proposal process and the timeline, just an overview. I'll also talk about preparing your artist's statement, which is requirement to submit a proposal. Then I'll turn it over to Molly. She'll spend some time talking about your biography, which is also a requirement to submit the proposal. And then Molly will be followed by Sharon, who's going to talk about the importance of submitting quality images with your proposal, and she'll give you some of the do's and don'ts of doing that. And then Andy will follow Sharon also on the subject of quality images and give you some advice and information about how to create the best quality image that you can, with the resources that you have. So we've got a lot to cover, and so let's get started. I should mention, by the way, that I know this is a Zoom call. Generally, I wouldn't read notes for a Zoom call, but there's a lot of information that I've got for you, and I do want to make sure that I don't miss anything. So I'll break the cardinal rule of Zoom and kind of refer to the notes as I need to. Anyway, so let's get started. As I said, so we're the members committee, and it's the members committee that invites our current members to submit your proposals to have an exhibition in our community galleries. As you may know, there are 3 locations where these exhibitions occur. 2 of them are on the 2nd floor of the Art Center in the community galleries there. And the 3rd is a designated exhibition space in the Summit Public Library. Now, the members committee accepts your proposals, and we'll talk about that submission process in a few minutes. We accept your proposals. We're responsible for reviewing them, and we're responsible for selecting the proposals for exhibitions. As you might expect, we receive many more proposals than we have spaces available. So let's start off then with the basics of the proposal submission process. Just general things first. You must be a current member of the Art Center to have your proposal selected for an exhibition. If you've had your works exhibited in one of our community galleries within the past 3 years, you're not eligible to be selected for an exhibition this year. And lastly, you must submit your proposal through the submission portal. Okay, there are no alternatives. There's no way to walk into the Art Center and fill out an application for a proposal. You have to use the portal. Now, there's a couple of different ways that I'm aware of to access the portal. One is through the Art Center's homepage. You can go to the top of the page. There's an exhibitions tab, and if you click on that and drill down through exhibition until you find exhibition opportunities, you'll find a link to the portal. Or alternatively, and probably easier, I'm sure you've all received multiple emails from the Art Center alerting you to the fact that we're accepting proposals for this coming up exhibition season. And there's a link to the portal in those emails, and you can go directly into the portal. I should say, having tried out the portal myself, just to see how it functions, even for those who are not particularly technology savvy, it's quite easy and straightforward. The information that's asked for is pretty basic, and we'll talk about that in a second. Just so you'll know, in case you're wondering, there is no entry fee to submit a proposal. You may submit a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 10 works for your exhibition proposal. Now, as I had mentioned, the portal is pretty easy to use. Name, address, phone number, email address. But there are some other things that you should have ready before you access the portal to make the submission process as smooth as possible. First, you will need an artist statement. It's a requirement to submit the proposal, and I'll talk about that next on crafting an artist statement that works for your particular submission. You're also required to submit a biography, and Molly will talk about that after I'm finished with the artist statement segment of the presentation. And then, of course, you're going to have your images, anywhere from 5 to 10 images that you're going to want to submit. And it's important that you keep in mind now, one, for each image, you're going to include a title. You're going to include the size of the piece. You're going to include the medium that you use to create it. And you're going to indicate the year that the piece was created. Now, various image formats are available when you're uploading your images to the portal. And in a little while, as I mentioned in the agenda, my fellow committee members, Sharon and Andy, are going to spend a fair amount of time talking about those images, especially the importance of submitting a quality image and how to actually create the best image that you can with the resources that you have so that you can submit a good quality image. So after you fill in all the required fields on the portal, you're simply just going to click submit, and you will get a notification. You'll get a confirmation email that will feed back to you all the information that was contained in your submission, along with pictures of the images that you've submitted. In the middle of mid-May, the members committee will get together to review all of the proposals and select those 14 lucky ones who will be chosen for an exhibition. Those proposals for exhibition, you'll be notified in early June about the member committee's decision. Okay, so that's the submission process. As I mentioned, it is fairly straightforward and easy to use. Now let's talk a little bit about the artist's statement that you will be required with your submit with your proposal. But before I talk about this statement specifically, I want to acknowledge that I know in the audience today, and for those who are submitting proposals, there are plenty of professional artists who've done this before. They're familiar with what an artist statement is and how to write one. But because of the nature of the Art Center's membership, we also have plenty of non-professional artists like myself, hobbyists, retirees who are taking classes. And a lot of those people are not familiar with what an artist statement is or how to craft one. So I've tried in my comments here to address both of those groups, both the pros who maybe can hear a few things that might help them craft an artist statement specific to this particular submission, which, as those of you probably know, is what you usually want to do, and something for those non-artists who are maybe writing their first one and want some information about how to craft a quality statement. Okay, so let's start with back up to the beginning with what is an artist statement. And simply put, it should be a brief expression of who you are, a description of your work, including the medium that you use to create it, and whatever else you would like us to know about how and why you created the pieces that you've submitted for consideration. So in short, what did you create? Why did you create it? And how did you do it? Now, I said that your artist statement should be brief. What do I mean by brief? General guideline. A couple of paragraphs should suffice, more or less, depending on how you feel. It's kind of up to you. But keep in mind, we're not looking for a dissertation. We don't need a story about your artistic journey and how you came to this submission. By the same token, a statement that reads, I've submitted my oil paintings for your consideration. Maybe that's a little bit too brief. And I can tell you by my short experience on the committee, reviewing submissions, we do get statements like that, and that leaves it kind of up to us to try and figure out what the artist is trying to convey with their work. So a little bit more than that will serve both of our best interests. Now, don't get hung up on explaining the inspiration or the symbolism behind each piece. Okay, your statement is more of a general framework for your proposed exhibition. It's more about the conceptual ideas and the aesthetic choices behind your work than it is about each individual item. If you truly have a unique process that's important for us to understand when we review your work, or one that your work doesn't accurately convey by itself, then please describe how you make your work. Now, I know for some, sitting down and writing a clear, concise, and compelling sentences about your art may not be easy, but it doesn't have to be hard. Remember, we're not evaluating the quality of your writing. We just want something to help us understand what your work represents and how you reflect that in your art. So, a few practical points for crafting your statement. First, please use simple language. Your artist statement should feel like it's written by you and not by an art critic or an art dealer or a curator or an art historian. And there's no need to wax poetic here, okay? Just straightforward language. As I said, use simple language, please. And please avoid using jargon or art speak. Your proficiency with buzzwords will not help us better understand your work. So please use your own voice. And lastly, don't confuse your artist statement with your biography. This is not the place to talk about your degrees, your prior exhibitions, or your artistic accomplishments. My fellow committee member, Molly, will talk about your biography in a few minutes. Now, if writing isn't your thing, and I understand that, I know there are people who are not great with a pen and paper, and you're having trouble thinking about what to write or writing the statement, then maybe you can just try thinking about what you would say to the members committee if you were in the room with us when we are reviewing your work, and assume that you have a minute or two to explain to us what you did and why you did it and why we should select your proposal for exhibition, and then just write it down just as you would say it. Now, if you still need more information, because I've tried to be cognizant of the time that we have, and we do have a lot more information to talk about. As you might imagine, there's plenty of information online. All you have to do is search on artist statements or how to write an artist statement, and you'll find dozens of sites with information about how to do it, what to consider, and there'll be samples of quality statements that you can copy. And finally, if you're thinking about, well, what happens if I don't include my artist statement? Does that disqualify my work from consideration? As I've mentioned before, the artist statement is a required field in the submission portal, so you won't be able to skip it. However, please remember that the members committee receives a lot more proposals to review than we can accept for an exhibition. And the more your artist statement helps us understand your work and what we're looking at, and the less it leaves to us to interpret on our own what we think we're seeing, the better it is for you, and the better it increases your chances of having us favorably review your work. So it's in all of our best interest for you to spend some time, craft a quality statement, and submit that along with your proposal. And with that, if there are any questions, I think I have a minute or two to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to invite my fellow member committee, Molly, to the workshop stage, and she'll talk to you about writing your biographies.
Thanks, Andrew. In the chat, I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but Gigi writes, the artist statement is written in the first person.
Okay. Um, I don't claim to be a specialist on artist statements, so I don't know if I would necessarily say it's necessary for our purposes. I think a statement that, as best you can, describes and promotes your work uh, would work for our purposes. I think preparing it in the first person is probably a good idea, um, and probably for a lot of situations that might be the best way. I don't know if it's necessarily the only way.
Linda,
Okay.
is there a limit or suggestion as to how, when the work was completed, e.g. 2023 to present? Is there, I think she's asking if there's a limit on when the work should have been completed.
Oh, I don't believe so. In fact, I think when I initially looked at it, it was cutting off at 24, but Mel, I think we corrected that, and you can now submit works uh, up through 2025. Okay, are we ready for Molly?
I think so. Let's go. Let's move forward with Molly.
Okay, Molly, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and hello, everyone. My background is in working with international galleries such as Gagosian and Yvon Lombert, and I've worked with artists at all stages of their careers, from beginning, emerging, and through to very well accomplished, such as Jenny Holzer and Simone Lee. And as Andrew said, we understand some of you are professional artists and others are not. And so I'll go through, fairly quickly the artist biography that we recommend. It's very simple, but also very important for artists at all stages of their careers. So let's see. Sorry, I'm just going to see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. All right. So with the application materials online, the specific instructions are to provide a brief biography. And so with that, the important elements to include, I've listed them here: name and your location, a brief mention of the medium or the technique that you use, your education or artistic background. Any artistic accomplishments, like Andrew mentioned, are really appropriate here in sort of a very basic format, as well as any exhibitions you've participated in, if there are any. Again, some there probably are, others not, but that's okay, quite all right. We're happy to have you propose anyway. Any publications your work may have been featured in, and also any awards you may have received. Let's see. So here, Mel, I'm not sure if you can make that a little larger at all. Otherwise, I can toggle back and forth, but I think I needed my reading glasses today. Okay. So thank you. Great. That's wonderful. So if you're including any, multiple exhibitions, publications, or awards, you have two options: either to write them as a text in a paragraph, or as a list. So, depending on the number that you have, maybe bullet points is more useful and clear. And other times, if you feel like writing it, just in a paragraph format, that's totally fine too. Be concise and brief, as the instructions indicate, but it is very helpful for us to have details, as much as possible. Keep in mind that the artist statement will include more information about the themes, as Andrew pointed out. Here is really sort of the cut and dry things that you've done, and what you want people to know about your education and background. And let's see, scrolling down to the examples, I've just used myself with some fictional examples here for easy reference. So here we have like more of a text version. And then if you look down a little bit further, there's, one with more of like a bullet point format. Just very basic, but very clear. When it's consistent like that, it makes it a lot easier for us to go through and understand, what you've done and who you are as an artist. And so best of luck. Are there any questions about the artist biography?
In the comments, Pooch asked if we could get a copy of your flyer emailed to everybody, and we can definitely do that after this session. We'll be also posting this session, so we'll do both, send that along with the recording of this session.
Great. All right. So it sounds like we can move on.
Yes, and so I think Sharon is up next to start the conversation about creating a quality image to submit with your proposal. So Sharon, it's all yours.
Hi there. I just wanted to go over, first of all, my name is Sharon Benjamin. I am a artist, interior designer, and an art teacher, and I do have a lot of experience in studio photography. So am I on screen or I don't know.
Yes, you are.
I still see you. Okay, so which is what I want to talk about today is shooting your artwork. It's very important to get a proper photograph to submit in your application process. The very first, and I will talk about single lens reflex, which is a 35 millimeter camera, and also your phone. I think many of you will be using your phones, but just in case, if you want to be as professional as possible, 35 millimeter is definitely the way to go. If you do have a 35 millimeter, you most likely have a tripod. You would want to use your tripod. You would want to use a 50 millimeter lens, and that is the most natural to your eye, to the human eye. So the first thing you really have to think about with your camera or with your phone is lighting. Ideally, we want an environment where we have 5,500 Kelvin. Kelvin is a term that we use professionally to measure the color temperature. So 5,500 is the most like daylight, and we could call that a cool white. If you do shoot outside, which is great, you can get your daylight. You can get that anywhere around 5,000, 5,500 Kelvin. And it would be preferable to use it or to shoot on a cloudy day, no direct sunlight. So you are trying to not have any glare and not have any direct sunlight that will cast a shadow or a reflection. All right. So if we start out with the camera, if you're using a 35 millimeter camera, you want to use approximately, put it in the manual setting. If you and you're looking for a film speed of 100 to 200, if you know how to read that. If you're familiar with your camera, you're going to know that all of this to begin with. So you want a 100 to 200 speed of an ISO. You want an aperture of about 11 and a shutter speed anything over 60 is good. maybe 250, something like that. So that's the manual mode. If you can get that in an automatic mode, you can check. Your camera will show those digital numbers. Then you're good. The idea is to shoot with a tripod, because a tripod will not move. If you can't use a tripod, then you need to set your camera, and this is true for your phone as well. You're going to set your camera on a steady basis. Now, you could, ideally, you want your artwork to be level. You want the top two corners and the bottom two corners of the image that's in the frame to be the same size, the same width. And if you can't get it level, you can always edit it in your photo library on your computer. You can do that. I can go into that later. So one way to do it is to be on a wall. You can take your photograph or take your artwork out of the frame, take it out of the glass. You want to position it. You can hang it from the wall because we know the wall is flat, or you can actually put it on the floor. If you put it on the floor, you need to take your camera or your phone and hold it over. You could sit on it. You can kneel on a chair, and you can shoot that way as well, because it has to be level. Otherwise, you'll get distortion. So I'll move on to using your phone. Most of you will be taking photographs of your artwork with your iPhone. On the iPhone, your lens is about 1.5, which is the equivalent in a 35 millimeter to I guess about a 35 or 26 millimeter wide angle. So if I didn't mention before, on your regular, on your 35 millimeter camera, you would want a 50 or 55 millimeter lens. That's the most normal. So anything over that number is telephoto. Anything under is wide angle. So going back to the cell phone or your phone, it only has a lens that's equivalent to a wider angle, 26 millimeters, not 50, which is normal. So that's a distortion that you have to compensate for. And you can do that in your editing process. Most people are not going to notice it with the human eye when they're looking at your photograph of your artwork. But you can edit it in photo library to make sure that your corners are all square. You want to square, meaning angles. All right, so also make sure it's 5,500 Kelvin. If you want to shoot inside and not outside, it's a good time of year to shoot outside, but if you have to shoot inside, you need a light source that doesn't have or produce any glare or any shadow. If your artwork has varnish on it, you're definitely probably going to pick up a glare. So you want to get it to a position where you're not getting any of that. And you have to move it around and just be aware of shadows and glare. And then you manipulate it until you don't see that. If you need a backlight, so in professional photography, inside a studio, which is inside, you have artificial lighting. So if you're in your house and you have windows, the light coming in is what we call ambient light. So you have to compensate. You might need an artificial light on the opposite side of your window, maybe one, to compensate, to give light from the other source, the other side. you could make up your own light. You could use a floor lamp. You could use any light source you have. You would want to diffuse it. You could use a piece of parchment paper over the actual light source so that it spreads your light around and diffuses it, and you don't have like a glow ball. But see what's in my notes here. You want to make sure your phone is steady. If you're doing it with your phone, or your camera's on a tripod or a steady surface. And if you do use your phone, you can use your timer, which is a great idea because you could set it to go off in a certain amount of time, get out of the way, and take a shot where you're not holding your phone, because your hands will move. You could set up your artwork with your grid on your phone if you want to use that. You want to make sure you disable the flash on your phone and turn off that live mode. I'm sure you all know about that. I hate that live mode, but you turn that off, turn off your flash so you just get just a regular shot. Make sure it's level and parallel in your viewfinder. Explained all that. And the only other thing I want to talk about is when you want to create light. So let's say you're in a room with no windows and you want to take this photograph, or have windows, but your shades are down or something. So you don't want your ambient light. So in a studio, ideally, you would have 2 bank lights in the back of your subject, which is your artwork. So you're going to have 2 lights that are artificial at a 45-degree angle coming in from the back, both sides, hitting your artwork. That is the best kind of light you can probably get, so that you avoid shadows and you avoid, hot spots of light. I guess that's about it. The light source itself should be maybe a compact fluorescent, if you know what they are. Those are your lamps. And you also want to do around 55 Kelvin. I might be getting ahead of certain people who don't know much about lighting, but that's the best I can tell you, that it should be similar to daylight. So if you want to avoid all that technical stuff, you could go outside and shoot outside, ideally on a cloudy day. And then you can you get the best results probably that's available for your artwork. If you do have the varnish on your oil painting, say, not everybody's submitting oil paintings. They could be doing acrylics. You might have the same problem with acrylics. Any other medium that doesn't have a reflection off of a canvas, you're pretty safe with. You won't have to worry about this. But you do have to worry if you have an oil painting and you have that varnish on there, because you may have a problem with that glare. So you just have to manipulate it until you get it to disappear. I think that's all I have to tell you about actually photographing your work. If you have any questions.
So Sharon, we have a question from Karen. How about scanned images?
In what respect? You're going to scan an image on your...
Yeah,
well,
that was just a question. How about scanned image? So Karen, do you have any, can you clarify what you're referring to?
Yes, thank you. I would submit images that I have scanned on my flatbed scanner and download it into my computer, and then I would send you that image. So it wouldn't be a photograph. It wouldn't be taken from a photograph.
Yeah, that's fine, but this is actually the step before you would scan a photograph. So you're saying you've already taken the photograph?
No, I'm saying I would put the artwork directly on my scanner. I have a flatbed scanner.
Oh, so your artwork is small enough to
Yes.
But there's okay.
Yes.
I'm
Yes, it
thinking
is.
of painting. I could
Yes,
not get
no.
on my scanner. Yeah,
Yeah.
you could do. Yeah, sure, you could do that.
Okay.
That solves all your problems.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
it's small enough, sure, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sharon, I don't see any other questions at the moment, but I remember in one of our recent meetings when we were talking about this issue of creating quality images, the subject came up about pieces that are framed um, that may cause problems when trying to photograph them and create an image for submitting.
So the question is,
That you may need to
can
take
you
them out of the
photograph it
frames
with the
to
frame
get a
on?
quality image. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's the same thing. If you have to leave the frame on because it could be professionally framed, you don't want to destroy the back of the photograph. What you could do is just edit it out, edit the frame out. So when you take a picture on your phone or your camera, right, you put it into your computer, it's on your photo library. In your photo library, every photo library has an editing button where, if you're not doing anything that requires serious editing, which you would do in Photoshop. So we're not talking about that because that's seriously professional. You just can edit on your computer and cut that frame out. You just easily cut it out. Again, be careful of the glass and the glare.
Yeah, and I think it was the glass and the glare issue that we had talked about the most that created the most problems for people when trying to
You could
photograph their work.
still photograph under glass and avoid the glare. You just have to really manipulate that piece of artwork in the actual room. You've got to move it somewhere where there's no ambient light reflecting off of the glass.
Okay, great. Well, I don't see any other questions. So with that, thank you for that. And I'm going to ask Andy to join us, and she's going to continue this conversation about creating quality images of your work and offer some more suggestions beyond what Sharon just talked about how to do that. And by the way, I should have mentioned earlier that Sharon has kindly volunteered if anybody does have any problems or needs, some additional assistance. She's volunteered to help people, so you might want to get in touch with her, and with whatever follow-up questions or help that you may need. So thank you, Sharon, for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, Andy, you're up.
Hi, I'm Andy. I actually have a little bit of a different background. I went to art school. I worked as a sculptor in furniture design. I was a poet who was published and was all over the city reading my poetry, also printmaker. My background after that was in biotech. So I have a, a very varied background, but I still now work in some interior design, and I do some photography on the side for friends and family where it's more outdoor work. So I worked a lot in lighting situations, photographing subjects or artwork in the outdoor setting. I typically don't work on the inside of a home. I find the lighting to be a little bit challenging. I know that Sharon just talked to you about different ways you can light your artwork. She got a lot more technical than I would ever get with my presentation because I'm not as proficient in lighting. I did do some studio work, but I was an outside photographer. I did street photography mainly in my career. So I was more worried about the circumstances that my art and my subjects were presented in the natural world. And I optimized that, just like Sharon had said, with a cloudy day, but a bright atmosphere. It would reduce shadow lines with my subject matter. It would enhance their clothing, apparel, and colors. So I would get a vividness in my artwork that I feel that I wouldn't necessarily get in a studio setting because I'm not as proficient with lighting. I did not have my own lights. I was able to use them in art school, but I can't say that was my main focus. So I did not become a master of the studio light setting like Sharon is. So if you have stuff where you're doing in a more studio setting, Sharon is definitely the person to contact. I'm sort of like an off the cuff, sort of like a little bit looser with how I photograph things. I know she talked about like not having your artwork behind glass. That's a huge benefit. I have tried to photograph my friends' work for submissions behind glass. It is very difficult to not find a glare no matter what setting you're in. If you can remove it, I would say that would be an amazing thing to do. I do definitely say you need a flat, steady surface or tripod. I have photographed work using my hands. It poses a lot of challenges. Sharon did talk about the grid setting. If you have an iPhone, and I can have this sent out to you guys just so you have it for your reference. If you go into your settings, you could click on your camera, and then there is a grid setting you could toggle to. I use the grid setting with most of my even everyday photography just so I could send, even if I'm taking pictures of my daughter, I like to have her in a certain portion of the frame. I like to highlight her outfit. Maybe there's like a natural element behind her that I want specifically frame where I'm not going to be able to crop all of that out. I like to have that setting on at all times just for me, just because I have that mindset of keeping things in a certain area of my frame. The other thing that maybe she didn't touch on, I'm just looking through all of my notes because I don't want to be redundant. Oh, so sculpture. I know some of our members have sculptures that they want to photograph or they want to submit. It presents a bigger challenge. As a furniture designer, I had that challenge photographing my work for submissions. I was actually in the International Contemporary Furniture Fair as a student. And in order to get my work submitted into the Contemporary Furniture Fair, I had to photograph it and have slides of my work. And I found, even as a photographer, it was challenging to not have the shadows interfere with the message of my piece. I have some sculptural work that I've done out of wood. It can be one of those things that the shadows can actually work with your work or they can work completely against it. My way to sort of mitigate that, if it's a smaller piece and you're working like inside a home or even outside, you can use whiteboards to like make sure that the piece is framed properly. You're getting light like around your piece in a consistent way. I just bought like poster board that was white and stiff. When you set up your tripod or you have your phone or your camera on a steady surface, you then have your hands free to sort of look and see. So when you set your timer, you can move your whiteboards around to focus the light. You're almost using it like a sunbather would direct the sunlight onto themselves on the beach or outside their home on their deck. You kind of have to think about, you're just trying to get that light into the right areas of your work to highlight it or mute areas that you maybe don't want, especially with sculpture. There can be areas where you want to highlight into your piece to show depth, or you want to have shadow lines around it to show interest, to show how it would look when you're standing in front of it on a pedestal. I know some of my work was all about shadow lines. Most of my furniture I created was supposed to live in a space that the shadows would move as the daylight moved. So, and I know a lot of work with sculpture, especially if it's going to be displayed outside, works with nature. So this is a good way of organizing your thoughts about how you want it to be viewed. I think Sharon like went over like most of the things that I had about high gloss. Those things are really hard for us to, when we get submissions and they're very glossy and the work is very reflective, it's hard to see what is beyond that. So trying, like Sharon said, to mitigate that, move it around the room. I try to stay away from direct light from a window. If I'm photographing, I like to photograph with my work against a chair or standing straight up, and then have my phone or my camera steady so I can then manipulate my work if need be as my pictures are sort of like presented to me. I'm not sure if we talked about resolution. I'm sure Sharon went over that. We want a nice high resolution with your work so we can view it when we're all talking about the submissions. Sometimes the work didn't have high enough resolution. We couldn't even look at it. It wasn't big enough for us to view. And when we're sitting in a room or talking on a Zoom and looking through your work, we want to have the best impression of your work, be able to see it and look at your artist statements and sort of like match everything up. And if it's too tiny, the file sizes are too small, you're disadvantaging the work that we really are interested in seeing. Saving files, I mean, I know I save my files as JPEGs. There are PNGs you could save it as. Editing your work is like, I usually edit my work on my phone. I don't work a lot on my computer, but people who are very proficient in Photoshop. There's another, there's a bunch of other different softwares that you can use, but the one that I've worked most in is Lightroom or Photoshop, where you can crop your photos. You could crop the frame out, because Sharon said, sometimes your work is beautifully framed. You don't want to pull it out of there and destroy it, but you can crop it in there and make your art look really beautiful. But focus in on the art and not the frame, because sometimes the frame is a distraction. It's just an enhancement to your piece. It is not the piece. So we want to sort of focus in on what you're showing us. And when the art's hung on the wall, the frame is beautiful. But for our purposes, we want to see just the art.
Andy,
go ahead.
So there's a question in here, kind of hits on that a little bit, and I don't know if it's for you or for Sharon or for both. But it reads, my art is entirely epoxy resin. It's super glossy from every angle. Very difficult to get any angle without glare. It also has hardware attached to it, so it doesn't hang or lay flat.
Okay. Some of my own work does not lay flat, and it's very hard to photograph. I could not stand it up on its end. It's a sculpture. So, the thing I could say that I have done is I've used black cloth to cut down on gloss with my work that is glossy, because I am working with oiled woods and they read very differently. Some woods are very holographic when you oil them. Some woods are very muted, like Purple Heart will start to turn brown after a while. So the luster will wear on it. I have used oils and different types of materials to make my work look glossier. So I know the challenges with that. Black cloth will cut down on the glare. I have shot things inside a black box where I took a cardboard box and I painted it all black inside. I put the work in it. I cover it with black paper and I shoot inside, almost like a light box, where I'm cutting the outside light and I'm just trying to cut down on that glare as best as I can. Depending on how big your work is, I'm sure we could work something out that would make your work look as beautiful as it should look for us to view, or any submission. But each piece, especially sculptural and glossy things, will have a challenge. And I think sometimes you need another set of eyeballs to help you like figure it out or come up with something innovative to make the work look its best. And I mean, that's what a little...
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
So just to comment on what you said was excellent. And I don't know if you realized it, Molly, but you gave two examples, which is very, very important in lighting. Lighting is everything in art, everything in design. I mean, you have to know. And there are lighting classes that artists take just to understand, in theater, in artwork, anywhere. So what you mentioned was excellent. The black cloth, even if you have velvet cloth or just black cardboard, those poster board that you buy at Michael's, you can get them and create that, not a box. So it will stop the reflection of the actual medium that the artist used on the painting. Like you said, high gloss epoxy. The opposite is what you also indicated with your whiteboards. That whiteboard will bounce light off of it. So think of a prism. If I put a light source right here and a white board, and I shot or I directed the lamp. Lamps are what we professionally what we call a light bulb. To hit the light on the whiteboard, it bounces off onto your, it goes like this, and light will bounce off of white to give your painting or your piece of artwork more light. So you might have a part of your painting that is dark or in shadow. You could easily add light to that directly with a white board. And you can similarly subtract light with the black fabric around. Just
And this is just so nice. We're exactly on time, 2 minutes before the hour. Enough for me to again thank you all for participating, and I hope you've got some useful information today from this session. And I wish you all the best in with your proposals, and hope you get one of those 14 slots available